I'm Stephanie Purdy-Hopko, and Point Edward girl through and through. And as far as my business experience resume, so to speak, I've had a really vast array, let's call it, of opportunities. So I started out in my family business, so Purdy Fisheries, and started there as a child. I was a figure skater, so I went on to become a professional skating coach, which was a whole vast array of skill sets. And then that led to a job working actually in arenas and doing programming and special events and all that sort of stuff in arenas, which never in a million years did I ever see that one on my horizon. I thought my coaching was going to take me to sports psychology, but you just never know when a right turn's gonna happen. And but a big part, so that part of my world was in British Columbia, and there was always a piece of my heart back here in Sarnia-Lambton and with the family business. So in 2003, my husband and I and child in my belly moved back here, and I started to kind of watch and listen around the fishery. And then over the next 10 or 12 years, I guess what ended up happening is created a brand for Purdy's. Purdy's had existed since 1900, but nobody knew what it was. So, created that, educated people on what it was, and kind of put it on the map, so to speak. And that was so fulfilling. And then it was time to, maybe I get itchy, maybe, it's just time for a new challenge. So then I segued into another business opportunity that had literally dropped into my lap. And that became Purdy Ideal You, which is a wellness clinic. And did I set out for that? No, but opportunity knocks sometimes. And you don't always have to be willing to take the risk or take the chance. I happen to be one of those people. I jump in and I figure it out. And so I did that, and that business has been in operation for almost 10 years. And then back in February of 2020, we opened our doors at our little sandwich shop in Point Edward called Red & Co. And then that's been a ride all of its own. So that was birthed out of my passion and my husband's passion for food. And, we loved the food aspect at the fishery and thought, okay, let's circle back to that. And Red & Co. was born. I would have to say, in a lot of ways, my dad, again, coming from a family, that, family business setting, and watching, my dad throughout my childhood, I would say, did he groom me for this? No, but I think he instilled a lot of good values and a lot of good traits in me that I've been able to carry throughout, and then sprinkle my little bits of Steph in with that. I don't really remember that. I can honestly say, though, that there were times at the fishery when my dad was kind of like, because he wanted me to come back and get involved in the fishery, but I think he just saw me sliding in and like taking over, selling fish behind the counter like my aunt did before me, so I don't think he dreamed that my brain would bring innovation and would bring, other aspects to the table. So there was definitely times where he was kind of like, what are you doing? And that's where my mother would interject and say, Milford, leave her alone, because my dad did that same sort of thing, with his dad. Right. So, my great grandfather started the business, then my grandfather, kind of took on his role. And then my dad could see things that my grandpa couldn't see. So my dad started to do that, and then enters sort of my brain. And then I could see things and see opportunities and know the things that I would personally want. So that's a lot of where I drive business from, is what are things that I want, that I'm looking for, because I don't believe I'm alone. And then, branching out and hitting those points. So my dad there. And then before Red & Co, there were definitely people that were like, what are you thinking? Like, why do you want to take on more? Especially, we were 49 years old. So
just in your prime.
Right on. Exactly. Age really doesn't factor in, but that definitely played in my own head at certain times. But we did it anyway. I guess one individual in particular is a gentleman by the name of Bill Bestwick. And I met Billy just through a random acquaintance that I had in my arenas job out in BC. And Billy ended up hiring me as a power skating coach, and then also with my arena skills. So he brought me into a facility called the Great Pacific Forum, which was a private ice rink in Delta. And so he brought me on there, and then he just shortly after moved back to Nanaimo, BC, and got involved with the Nanaimo Clippers Junior A Hockey Club. And so he hired me there for hockey schools and to do a little bit of work here and there with the Clippers. But the more I got to know Bill and saw his mind, he was a guy that could literally figure out how to make money from a garbage can. He was that guy. It was like every little thing he could see, he could find purpose or value, so his mind just really always inspired me. And his innovation too. He was a guy that literally got his first job by having his roommate from university pretend that he was, pretend he was somebody else to be his reference for him, because at the end of the day, we can't get jobs because we don't have experience. Well, how do you get experience if nobody will hire you? And he knew he was the right guy for the job, but his resume couldn't back him up. So, did he fib some? Yeah, I look at it as that was good innovation. So he's just one of those guys that, I have found myself over the years picking up the phone and calling. When it was time for me to leave the fishery, he was the guy I picked up the phone and called, because he at one point had left a job and a position that broke his heart, and how do I do this? How do I maneuver this? So Billy is definitely been a mentor and somebody that I've looked up to and admired over the years. Immediately. Actually, truthfully, because again, as a coach, I was self-employed, but that wasn't fulfilling enough. So my arena position, so I worked for the largest arenas company in North America. And for me, you put a challenge in front of me, I'm going to crush it and I'm going to go after it. And what ended up happening is I burnt myself out. I did. So I started out working at one arena, then they added a second arena, and then they took over the management of a third arena, all in the same community. So, I went from, doing this to then, being spread out and keeping all these balls in the air. And I wasn't able at that point to say, enough, or I need help. That's one of my weaknesses is I don't like to admit that I need help, because I want to be strong and I want to show that I'm capable. And I really had to learn that is a strength. Sorry, I'll get emotional. But it actually is a strength to be able to say, I can't do it all, because you don't have to do it all. But there's where sometimes, again, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we think we need to. And so with that, what ended up happening is I literally burnt myself out. And I stepped back and I evaluated, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to be who I am, who I am. And I'm always going to be that person that gives 1,000%. And so do I want to give 1,000% to a company that doesn't care about me? Because in that span of being burnt out, stressed out, like doctor's note, you stay home, you're a hot mess. The company I worked for quit paying me. I was a salaried employee, and they froze my pay. And so if that's the thanks I get, for busting my ass for you, you know what? I'm gonna go work for myself then. I'm gonna go work for my family. And that way I get to always reap, what I sow. And so that was a real drive for me. So every day, every day, being an entrepreneur is it's vulnerable. It really it's vulnerable. And then you want to put food into that's vulnerable as well. Back when I was at Purdy's, I started teaching cooking classes, and that first time you're like, okay, well, I know how to coach, so therefore I know how to teach, and I know how to cook, and again, I know how to teach. But when you put yourself out there with flavors, just because I like it doesn't mean you're gonna like it. Right? Because taste is so subjective. Keeping the reins on myself. It's and learning to say no. Yeah. Learning to say no. That again goes back to, I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to let anybody think that, I can't do something, or I want to help, or, I want to be available. And it's realizing that, you can't say yes to everything. You can't be all things to everybody. And in business, the community will sometimes push that. So Red & Co, for example, we opened on a Friday, and we initially thought, okay, soft opening, we'll be open Friday, Saturday. And we didn't really know. It was like, just open our doors and we'll figure it out. And so we did the Friday and Saturday thing only. Now, again, the pandemic hit 3 weeks after we opened our doors. So, we were open for 3 weekends, closed for 3 weekends, and then thought, okay, we'll open again. And we literally just stayed Fridays and Saturdays. And there were people along the way that, tried to tell us that we can't do that. Well, at the end of the day, we can do whatever we want. And for us, we really felt that keeping it small, keeping it simple, keeping it to those 2 days a week, because I have another business. My husband, has a full-time job, that at least this way we could bring our passion to it. We could bring our heart to it. And I think that comes through. And I believe that's what people love about their Red & Co experience, because otherwise sometimes there's this need or this drive that your heart doesn't really believe, but it's the voices in your head. It's the people on social media. It's that if you let that influence you too much, that's where burnout can happen. That's where you end up taking on things that you really don't want to. And it waters things down, and then you don't love it anymore, and you become resentful and all of that. So, we had a gentleman one day, he was sitting on the bench, waiting for his panini to cook. And he turned to me and he said, like, why are you only open 2 days a week? We're open 3 days a week now, but this was when we were open 2 days a week. And he said, why are you only open two days a week? And I said, because then it's fun. And he kind of looked at me, and it took him a minute. And then he was like, good answer. Like, what else could he say to that? Right? It's fun. I love to come in then. I want to be there. I'm excited to be there. Right? When you do too much, sometimes, it doesn't take long for that passion to sort of like start to wane. And
as you're turning the key, you're dreading it.
That's right. So, now we're fortunate enough that we've set ourselves up that we can do that based on our overhead. So, there's where it's sometimes that reverse engineering of things, and you do you.
Well, and
a lot of that is engagement from the community, the feedback, seeing the same faces come through the door, having somebody come in and say, I've been hearing such great things about this place. And, my buddy's been telling me forever that I need to get my butt in here, that sort of thing. That to me is what it's all about. And it's not even always just about, that I love the food. It's, that people want to come there because they want to be part of us and what we've created and part of our community. We've Red & Co, our whole shtick is about being different. It's about offering things that nobody else really has, taking something traditional and putting a spin on it. And for sure, that was more like, not so much now in what I'm doing, but, in the past, I, of course, as a female power skating coach, you're treated a little bit like, well, here comes the chick. When I was in the fishing business, I was in Toronto once at, I was the guest purveyor at this kind of a swanky food event at the ROM. And I was there with Chef Anthony Walsh from the Oliver and Bonacini company. So he was like the guest chef, and I was the guest purveyor, and he'd done a number of dishes, and a number of them incorporating Purdy's fish. So Anthony at one point during the night had come over and grabbed me out of the crowd and said, I want to come and take you and introduce you to my wife. So, we go scurrying across the room, and we walk up on this group of people. He comes up behind it, her back was to us, and she turns around and he says, Susan, I'd love to introduce you to Steph. And she looked at me like with this startled look on her face, and I was kind of like, what? And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. She says, I just assumed you were a Stefan. So, here's her husband, the chef, and he's talking about this fishmonger basically. And, I prefer Steph as my moniker. And so it was always Steph. And so she right away assumed I had to be a dude. So, there's some of that. My own father, as a kid, I wanted to learn, to fillet fish. Well, like you can't, kind of thing, because you're a girl. I wanted my dad to teach me how to run one of the fishing boats, because there's lots of times that they end up like where the battery dies on the boat, or no, you're a girl. You just stay there in the store and sell the fish, because that's what girls do. So yeah, I most definitely have. Most definitely have. I would say the ultimate for me was Purdy Fisheries on Pitching In with Lynn Crawford. When in February of 2003, pregnant Steph gets on a plane, and I am flying from, my home for the last 13 years of my life in British Columbia, leaving my husband behind in BC, and I'm, flying home now to start a new life, back here in Ontario. And I remember sitting on that plane and kind of going through goals that I had, for when I get here and I get my feet wet, so to speak. And one of my personal goals was to get Purdy's fish in the hands of a chef with some status and some stature and all of that sort of thing. I know the quality that we have, and the way Purdy's does things is very, very different from other fisheries, and it was trying to get that recognized. So that was one of my own personal goals, was to get Purdy's fish on the Food Network. And in my brain at the time, I can honestly say it would be one of those things where nobody else would know, but we would be able to say, so that episode, like with Chef so-and-so, that pickerel that he cooked, like that was ours, that sort of a thing. So to be able to get to the point where, not one step beyond it, I would say it was multiple steps beyond, to literally have our family, our business featured on a show, like an entire episode on the Food Network. That was a huge personal win for me. You know what? Other than like the plastic shields and the hand sanitizer and all that sort of stuff, we weren't really impacted. Well, I guess maybe like in some of the caterings that we do or have done, you would normally do sandwich platters, for somebody's office or whatnot. And, we had to resort to doing all individual, packaged things. But other than that, we weren't affected, because we're a takeout only establishment. And if anything, I think the pandemic helped keep the brakes on us, and in essence gave us permission. That was maybe the initial permission to be able to keep things small and contained and all the rest. I think I'll just circle back to what I said earlier, and it's just the realization that it's okay to admit when you need help, and you don't have to be able to do it all. You don't. And yeah, like I said, that part, I'm still working on that. So it still makes me very, very emotional, but that's the biggest. Do your market research and, ask around, have people taste, get feedback. We did that with Red & Co. I'm sitting at our kitchen table, and, we brought groups of friends and acquaintances around our kitchen table, and, we fed them our ideas. We fed them our thoughts and said, I don't want you to tell me this is wonderful. I want you to give me your honest feedback. And then it's being willing to be open to receive that and not take it personally when somebody does, critique or criticize. It's learning from those things and learning from the face plants and whatnot. Over the last year and a half, 2 years, we've definitely had people that have walked in and, they kind of look and they'll peruse the menu, we'll offer to engage with them and they literally will turn and walk out the door. And 10 years ago, that would have crushed my soul. Like it would have, because I would have taken that like so personally. And then there was, I would feel this need to run after them and sort of be like, well, like, what can we do? No, now today, and whether it's, because I'm older, more mature, I don't know what it is, but now I can genuinely say, not our people, not our people. You can't be all things to all people. And if you try to be, it won't work. You pick your niche, pick your lane, commit to it with all of your heart and stay in that lane. And you will find your people. You will find your people. And, that's why we're able to have, different sandwich shops in town. We buy all our meat and cheese from Novelli's. Novelli's does sandwiches. Do we compete with Novelli's? No, we don't. Do I have my favorite sandwich at Novelli's. I have my favorite sandwich at Coffee Culture downtown. And it's not a competition. And that's where sometimes I think too, in business, we get so worried about what somebody else is doing. And, that can be a distraction as well. But that's where it's find your passion, pick your niche, stay in your lane and go after it.